All right. So with his chart, we got the zodiac is fixed on the Saturn graph here. So the ascendant's on the right, the shaded part below the horizon is above in this Saturn graph. So kind of the opposite of what we're seeing in the chart. You have to turn it around. If you had a sheet of paper, you would do that, but on the printouts, we don't. So if Saturn starts in Virgo, and he's born in 79, by 80, Saturn's hitting his ascendant. So some difficult thing really came up. For me, when Saturn hit my ascendant, my grandparents died. Actually, my mom's mother, father, and her older brother all died within 6 months of each other. The mother died, the father couldn't live without the mother, and then he died within a month or so, and then the brother couldn't live without his mother and drunk himself to death in 6 months. So that was my world. So, but there was something, it could have been a grandparent going or something, some difficult thing happened in the first year, and then he was on his own. It could be struggling with health, it could be a challenge with health. But then by 80, Saturn's going down the quadrant. It's not, it goes through, let's see, where are we here? So he starts with the Saturn just past the opposition. So it's not, it doesn't start with the opposition, but it's in the 12th house, goes into the ascendant, and it's down the personal growth factor in the early part of life, just a kid going through things. But when it hits the IC in 88, that's the first thing that really would affect deeply his motivation, where he was or where he was being. And so in 88, he's only 9 years old. So this is something with school, where he's living, whether they moved or changed places, or there was somebody affected him deeply at that time that affected his motivation. And he's absorbing, and then he's feeling, I got to do something. Maybe you got inspired, you ran across someone you don't know. You'd have to ask to see what's happening back in 1988. What happened when you were 9? But that built up. He's in school, he's just a kid, he becomes motivated. When you're motivated, you don't know what you want. You know, I don't want this anymore, I want to go this way. So he started moving in a new direction. Then by the time 94, by the time Saturn comes up and conjuncts the sun, 94, he's only 15. But he's made a decision about what he wants to do with his life. Saturn's on his sun. And before that, it would have just hit his Mars, but it was on his sun. So that's probably when he decided to add musician, or he was going to do something at that point. That was probably the beginnings of the musician, the 15-year-old one, and playing guitar or drums or something coming up at that point. So I see it like that. Now, I don't know. We're talking cross cultures in other countries and other places. So I don't have the perfect imagination of what's happening to a 15-year-old boy in context to Pakistan. Okay, you have a very strong hormonal guy coming up in a very judgmental society, a very strong society, and he's not. But at this point, 93, 94, he might have met somebody, he might have started doing his music. He started saying, I got to do this, and he started to work on something for himself. He's growing in capacity, he's adding skills. So the idea of finishing schools and adding skills, or having to go in the way you're supposed to go, or what people want you to do, he's starting to make his own decision. But there would have been pressure from parents to do, want you to do this, want you to do that. So that's the nerve. You'd have to ask someone to ask them about it to see what happened. But then by the time 96 came on, Saturn, in 3 years, Saturn's on his descendant, he's 18, it's starting to come above the horizon. He's starting to come out of home and family. You know, and that's 96, so that's 17. Okay, so that's 17. 17 going to 80, so he wants to get out and do things. So that's high school, that's secondary school, and high school, university coming. But at this time, usually, you want to get out and know people and accomplish more. So sometimes a student would build up and get his degree by the time it's midterm, but he would have temptations. Neptune has Neptune in the 3rd house. Do I stay and study? Do I do this? If he had the dream of being a musician, maybe put a band together. Or maybe, I have no history, so I don't know. Maybe something came together there, but it would start to be trying to move to make his mark out in the world around other people. But this is not his strong element. This quadrant is the sensation quadrant, is not the quadrant he's the strongest in. So he may have had some difficulty in setting up. He knows what he's doing, but he may not have had the perfect reception. It may have been a smaller thing, a small group, and something in the side. But it's part of the growing up. So by the time you get to 2002, 2003, Saturn's on the midheaven. Okay, by Saturn on the midheaven, that's a peak of status. So by 2002, 2003, okay, 99, so that's 24. At 24, he's got a certain status. So I'm sure he's playing his music, or he's got his band, or he's set up at this point with Saturn on his midheaven. Then it builds up, goes along, and in 07, by 07, Saturn's going along, and Saturn's opposing his Sun in 07. So he's working on the status, on growth and influence. At the same time, he runs into some real delays or some setbacks with Saturn opposing his Sun in 07. When the band falls together, when there's some difficulties, maybe there's some restrictions on what he's playing. Certainly, there was some limitations that he would be taking personally. Some restriction on his goals. And that would trigger off to the Saturn return in 08, and then to the next identity crisis in 09 as Saturn hit the ascendant. Now maybe he had a totally different job and is working at a totally different job, and it fell apart, and as it was falling apart, maybe it was in 09 that he would start his music stuff. But I think there probably had to be a mix of it, of playing the music through here, and maybe he was working for Dad or had some practical. I have trouble seeing him being that practical. I think he's too radical and would be more rebellious. But there was some limit that came in here, some restriction that came in as Saturn opposed to Sun in 2000. It was just one hit, but still, that was in 07 to 08. So that's on and off through that year, So don't know, but it would have set him back, and it would force where he can't get other things. He has commitments. He's locked in. What he might be playing with people didn't want to play. He might have had difficulty with his dad. But it's told him there's nothing he can do. He had to wait. And then he's biding his time with the Saturn. Then the Saturn return comes, and that's the end of the old, beginning of the new, it feels like. It's 29 to 30. And then it's in his 12th house, so he's still going to feel, I don't fit in here, I don't fit in here, I don't fit here. So as Saturn is his ascendant, a new identity would come. He would feel insecure, depressed, not sure of himself. At the same time, anytime he tried to go in the old way, it wouldn't work, and he had to start working on a new way. So maybe he really started studying his music much more seriously during this period. It's repeating things that happened when he was just 1 year old. He was just 2 years old. He was just having to go. So now he's going through building up his next cycle, building up his depth. Well, that's his strength point. The planet's going below the horizon. So it goes down, and he got down to his IC in 2017. 2017, Saturn's on his IC. So that's probably about the time, I probably met him at 16 or 17, probably just as this was coming up. And this is a point of deep motivation. He knows he's putting up with stuff. He's not doing things as much as he was doing. But even when I met him, he was traveling. He had a band. I think he was in Pakistan. I think he was playing here and playing around North America. He had some big gigs, and then he was going back. So he was functional and doing some artistic things there. Then he went back. And as Saturn was around the IC, I think our session was in there, and that's when he began to study the astrology. Well, he knew some astrology he'd studied astrology, was interested in it beforehand, the Vedic or the Eastern astrology. But he lined up and he joined the webinar series, so he's been going through the webinar series. But this was a deep motivation. So you look at his chart from being the Sun in the 5th house in the Mars, you can see the band and the playing the music or the dancing. But it's in Aquarius. You can also, with the Mercury in the 6th house, you can also see the counselor, the astrologer, the teacher. So you can see how astrology would be useful to him. We give a way of understanding how to respond to people and what's going on, rather than just being overly reactive. Help them to understand and see that. And that would fill a big gap. So Saturn was going over his IC. He's studying during this time, studying astrology during this time. I'm not sure. I know he was back in Pakistan for a big part of this. But as this went along past the IC into the fourth house, you know that you don't want, and you think you're going to set it up in a year or two in Saturn history. I say, I'm going to change this. And usually you're going to be setting it up over the next 15 years. So there's still a work to integrate it, to work with things, to build things up. And Saturn's going through the fourth house, but it's a very foundational basis of his understanding, his teaching. Now, as this comes up, Saturn's going to come up. Next thing is going to hit it's going to conjunct his sun in 23. So he's between the IC and this and the conjuncting the sun. So he's had his deepest motivation. He knows what he doesn't want. He's working to build in new things, to build up, to grow in capacity, to add skills. And I mean, astrology and music are almost the same language. You know, the 12 notes, the 12 signs, the 7 planets. So you can see the 7 notes in the scale. Like the music, astrology theory and music theory are almost identical. So he's got these 2 foundations. I don't know anything else. I know he's got these 2. And it's building up to 23 when Saturn conjuncts the sun. At this point, he's going to put something together between these things. He's going to make the next big decision on what he's going to do in his life. So to make the commitment, to be trying to put things together, to trying to work these things, we're finishing the webinar series now. It's 3 years. Now what? Now how does he use it? He's going to be trying to create with it, maybe he's going to write songs with it. He's going to be adding it in. It's going to be part of his world, and he'll have these couple of things to do. Astrology is eccentric and it's traditional, Aquarius, but it's eccentric enough, square Uranus. It could be shocking to his father. It's almost a plus. But he's going to start deciding what he wants to do for himself. He's going to define his goals again. He defined them when he was 15, 16, 14, 15, and here he is again now in 23. So that's 14, 24. Sorry, no, 23, no, 14, 34. He's going around this and deciding it again. Okay, no, it's negative than 34. It's got to be, sorry, I'm just 20, 40, 20,